phrases stick out. God shows no partiality, and do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Everyone thought that Jesus' death was the hardest thing they could ever imagine. All of those friends of his who had traveled with him day and night. But when the women went to the tomb to roll away the rock, to pay him one last bit of respect, Jesus was not there. How could they know? How could they have come through this much pain and know, beyond a shadow of the doubt, that there was more? All they could see was that his body was not there. They could not know. And the fear that they felt when someone else appeared there. Yet they heard the words of assurance, do not be afraid, and they believed what they heard. So much so that when they saw Jesus behind them, they fell on their knees, they took hold of his feet, and they worshiped him. This is the only time we're told in any of the stories that anyone worshiped Jesus. Jesus always pointed to God. He was not the one to be worshipped. And yet at this point, the fear, the anxiety, the joy all melted together. And these women fell on their knees and worshiped him. With grateful hearts, with overabundance of joy, with the faith that they needed to overcome the hardest time of their life. That is the good news. If we ever wonder what the good news is that we are supposed to be sharing with people, that is the good news. That Jesus is there with us in the worst times of our life, upholding us. Now, if you were not able to be here this past week or in some other faith community where you heard the story leading up to this point that we hear today, then you did not hear the story of Jesus' friends and all of the people who believed that he had this good news to share. You did not hear and experience the sadness, the disbelief, as the disciples sat at table with Jesus, and he told them that they would betray him, they would desert him. And yet they were adamant, no, we will never desert you, Lord. And a few hours later, there was none to be seen, except a few women. Mary was there for Jesus as he was tortured, as he hung on the cross. She sat there. She kneeled at his feet. A mother's pain of seeing her child reviled, in pain, in the worst way possible. She was there. And then we're told in one of the other gospel stories that Jesus was present enough to her, to be there for her, to tell his disciple, take care of her. This is now your mother. You have responsibility for her. We will not leave her alone. If you know the worst pain of your life in your head right now, can you also hear Jesus' words? I am here with you. I will not desert you. Can you understand why God called you here this morning? To hear this good news? That the tomb was empty. That we do not need to be afraid. That there is joy. That God is here with you, upholding you. Can you hear that good news this morning? That's why God called you here in your heart. To hear and to see you are not alone. That is the good news. That is where we enter today. With all of the pain and the hurts that we have, the accumulated blaming and shaming, the rationalizations, that is where we enter today. Those women were not the only ones who reacted in fear and were surprised by the empty tomb. The people who were the most studied of Jewish history, the people who were preparing in all of their life to hear and see the Messiah coming from God. Those people were intellectually prepared, and yet the Pharisees and the Essenes, that whole community of people who were waiting for that day, their eyes peeled for the sight of the Christ, could not see and did not believe. But those who were in pain, who needed Jesus to walk beside them, who needed to hear the good news that God was there, believed, heard, and felt the good news. Everyone is an amateur when it comes to this. No one can explain what this means. Yet we are told to react, to hear, to feel as a child would feel, as a child would believe. Over the years, we have read the testimonies and yet tried to figure out some way to explain these things as a child could hear them. So we try to put ourselves in the place of children. One of the things that we have done is we've taken eggs. As we all know, that the egg is a symbol of new life. The egg, out of the egg comes, miraculously, new life. We color them, we put them in our carvings in churches, we have them in our stained glass windows, we immortalize them, we revere them for some strange reason. But they're very simple little things, aren't they? We see them every day. Out of them we can get our food, our sustenance. And on Easter, let's see if I can get this one open. We take the plastic ones and we fill them, don't we? Yes, this one is filled. I don't know if I can find someone who would like to share this egg with me. Would you like this egg? There's some little prizes in it. You'll be careful. That's a little chickie, and this is a little sticker that you can put on something. And you can have this egg if you like. You notice the child accepted it without question, right? There were surprises in it. There were prizes, if you will, in it. And I have another egg here. And yet when we open this egg, empty. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a child and I went to an Easter egg hunt and I got an egg that didn't have anything in it, it was not a sign of joy. But as we intellectualize, as we grow up, we know that the empty egg, like the empty tomb, can symbolize for us still beauty, still possibilities, still the broken open hearts that we have that Jesus enters into. Still the tomb that was empty because Jesus lived again. The only story that we know that God redeemed the grave for us, so that death no longer held the power that we thought it did. And even at the grave today, we go to the grave, we sing, Alleluia, 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 because we believe in the empty tomb. The empty tomb. That's why we came here today. When Mary Magdalene found the tomb empty, she was frightened and maybe angry. And yet the angel calmed her. The risen Christ does not want you to make sense of him. The risen Christ wants to be welcomed into your heart. The risen Christ wants you to be able to give the fears, the angers, the pains over to him. Let him take them to the cross. And you could have the filled heart of love that you know Jesus is walking beside you. God is there upholding you. That's what Jesus wanted. For you to know that there is more. That there is more. The resurrection must find its way into our hearts. Not through here, but through here. It was 9 years ago today that a woman walked into my church at the end of the Easter service. And she brought with her this simple piece of cloth. And she waited for the service to end and all of the Alleluias to be sung and for people to come streaming out into the foyer where we had prepared a feast, much like the feast that is back here today. And she came to me at the end of the line of people greeting me, wishing one another happy Easter, hallelujah. And she gave this to me, only it was brown with smoke. She was a heavy smoker. And she told me that she had made this for me, that she had heard that I was at that church, and that God had told her to write a message for me. And so she was a woman who crocheted, if you know crocheting, that's what this is, and she does not use a pattern, but she wrote the words, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." That's what this says. I accepted it from her. She asked me for communion, so we went to the sacristy and we shared Easter communion together. And she disappeared. I went home and I washed this, and I put it in my communion kit, and I take it with me wherever I go. These words are, of course, the last words that Jesus uttered before he died, before this human body gave up in pain. These are also the words that help us to believe that Jesus is right here with us. And every time I take it out, when I'm going to the bedside of someone who's sick or can otherwise not come to be with us here, I take this with me, and I remember that this is the good news. This is why we are here today. This keeps us alive. And so we brought our pain. We brought our unbelief. We brought our wondering, our searching. We brought all that life has given us, foisted upon us. Maybe our bodies don't do what they once did and we are angry. Maybe we've been ill and today we're well again. Maybe we know someone who doesn't deserve to suffer. And God called us here into this same room. When we believe, when we share this good news, when we rejoice together, we bring God alive. Mary Magdalene, Matthew the tax collector, Simon Peter who doubted and deserted, Judas who betrayed, all forgiven, assured, freed, allowed to be and to become. This morning we read Paul's explanation of the good news, Peter's explanation of what he knew and heard the best he could, the Marys, dancing and rejoicing. All of them were transformed. We use a butterfly this morning to symbolize the transformation. I'm wearing butterflies here. And in the back, the children. Julia, could you bring me one of those butterflies? Could you bring that to me? She's coming. This morning, the children are making the symbol of resurrection, of transformation. But that's okay. If she doesn't want to, that's okay. That's okay. You can go back there and see them later. It's fine. Thank you, Julia. It's okay. And they're putting the decorations on the outline of a butterfly. Why? Because it's another thing we can't understand. We cannot understand the butterfly's transformation. Sure, we know about the caterpillar, we know about the cabbage, we know about the chrysalis, and we know about the stunning revelation and when they break out of their chrysalis. But we still can't explain it. The transformation is of God. It's like our hearts. I have a little cartoon on my door. There's a caterpillar lying on a psychiatrist's couch. And there's a large butterfly sitting there as if he was Freud. And he says, you really have to want to be transformed. So this good news that we came here to proclaim, to hear, that every one of us is loved, freed, accepted, forgiven, raised out of the tomb with Him. There is better life to come. That Jesus walks here with us, beside us, upholding us, in front of us, behind us, until that time when there is no more sickness, there is no more death, there is no more crying. We are here. Believe, share, rejoice in the good news. Hallelujah, Christ is risen.